I now have the pleasure to invite Mrs. Margareta Wahlström, Special Representative of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction, to update the committee on the progress made on the preparation for the World Conference. You have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair. In December 2013, the United Nations General Assembly decided that the Third World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction will be held in Sendai City, Japan, from the 14th to 18th of March 2015, and at the highest possible level, with the following objectives outlined: to complete the assessment and review of the implementation of the Yoga Framework for Action, to consider the experience gained through the regional and national strategies and institutions and plans for disaster risk reduction, and their recommendations, as well as relevant regional agreements under the implementation of the Yoga Framework for Action. 3, to consider and adopt a concise, focused, forward-looking and action-oriented post-2015 framework for disaster risk reduction. 4, to identify modalities of cooperation based on commitments to implement the post-2015 framework for disaster risk reduction. And 5, to determine modalities for periodic review of the implementation of a post-2015 framework for disaster risk reduction. A note from the Secretariat identified as A/conference 224/PC1/4 reports on the progress on organization of the World Conference and describes the consultations and the development of the draft program. The report details the continuity of world conferences on disaster risk reduction, the launch of the consultation process for a post-2015 framework, and the draft provisional program and early organizational matters. A few words on the preparation for the Third World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction itself. The accreditation process was initiated for today's first preparatory committee meeting and will be pursued until November 2014. Registration for the World Conference itself will very shortly open. The provisional program of the World Conference, per usual practice at UN conferences, a formal intergovernmental segment will be held, as well as a multi-stakeholder segment with working sessions and a public segment open to all, which will include exhibitions, marketplace, documentaries, workshop, youth events, and many other events. The voluntary commitments, as outlined in the General Assembly resolution, where the General Assembly invited voluntary commitments by all stakeholders to help implement the post-2015 framework and the work of disaster risk reduction over the coming years. At the moment, numerous commitments have been registered in the World Conference website. For example, from the Nepal Ministry of Federal Affairs and Local Governments, which promised to support 130 municipalities to prepare local disaster risk management plans. Similarly, in Asia, a network of organizations including Plan International, Save the Children, UNICEF and World Vision have committed to the implementation of a comprehensive school safety program. The website of the World Conference is the main source of all substantive and logistical information and is updated on a regular basis. I also take this opportunity to highlight that the 2015 Sasakawa Award process has been launched. I encourage those of you who intend to submit your applications no later than the 31st of October 2014. On the financial side, the General Assembly urged international and bilateral donors, as well as the private sector, financial institutions, foundations, and all other donors and countries to support the preparations for the World Conference through voluntary contributions to the Trust Fund for Disaster Reduction. To this end, the UNISDR Secretariat prepared a funding request to reflect requirements to cover the cost related to the World Conference and to the strategic process and consultations leading up to the conference. The funding request was shared with all member states. The ISDR Secretariat is grateful for the in-kind support of the host governments of the regional ministerial conferences, platforms and consultations, namely Ecuador, Egypt, Fiji, Italy, Kazakhstan, Nigeria and Spain. And we also thank all other contributors who, through work and substantive contributions, made these meetings possible. The Secretariat is also grateful for the financial support already received or pledged, and in particular, of course, to Japan as the host country of the conference and to Switzerland, who are hosting us here for the PrepCom. Thus far, we have about half the funds needed. I therefore take this opportunity today to appeal to all stakeholders to contribute within your means to the Trust Fund for the disaster risk reduction to ensure that all the necessary resources are in place to deliver a successful World Conference in March 2015. And I also like to thank all the countries and donors that have already contributed to the conference. Together with our host, Japan, we are preparing to welcome you all to Sendai for fruitful discussions and to jointly consider and adopt a post-2015 framework for disaster risk reduction, one that will shape a disaster-resilient world for all of us and for the coming generations. Thank you.